Good evening, I'm Dike Rostant. Welcome back to TTT News. Water everywhere and not a drop to drink may be funny for you if it does not apply to you. But we are speaking about water stabilization in our country with none other than Minister of Public Utilities, Marvin Gonzales. It is time to go in depth with me, Dike Rostant. Welcome, Minister. Thank you for making the time. How are you?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me, and thank you for that opportunity to speak directly to water issues affecting the people of Trinidad and Tobago communities all over. This problem has been with us for ages, and I'm trusting this responsibility as Minister of Public Utilities to identify solutions for transforming the water sector in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as improving the water supplies of communities all across the island. It is indeed a very challenging task, but I consider myself very fortunate to be given this opportunity to respond to the issues in the water sector in Trinidad and Tobago and to ensure that every citizen of this country enjoys a reliable water supply.
And with that work and that vision, what is the water improvement and stabilization about?
So when I first assumed duties as Minister of Public Utilities, I recognize that there are a number of communities across the island of Trinidad and Tobago who enjoy, or rather their water supply is less than what is desired and what is rather acceptable. So there are some communities across Trinidad and Tobago, perhaps 34 to 35%, that enjoy 24/7 water supply. Of course, the main objective is for every community across the island to enjoy a 24/7 water supply. So I undertook an assessment and an examination so as to determine why so many of our communities are not getting a 24/7 water supply, why they're getting water 2 days a week, 3 days a week, why some of them are getting water once every 9 days or once every 10 days. And I recognize that there are many issues that might be contributing to the fact that so many of our communities are not getting that efficient water supply.
And in that answer, Minister, you said communities more than once. I understand that there's also a community water improvement program.
Yes, there is a community water improvement program. It is under the PSIP of the Ministry of Public Utilities, and I will go into more details about this particular program. Because in essence, what it is short-term interventions, identifying issues in communities across Trinidad and Tobago that may not require huge capital expenditure so as to improve their water supply. For example, next week we will be launching the refurbished booster at Mova, the refurbished water treatment plant in La Fortune in Point Fortin. We'll also be launching a new booster in Tamina, and there are many other areas where the intervention that was in fact needed would not have cost the taxpayers of this country $5 million or $10 million. It was just a simple intervention to refurbish those boosters, to get a new well. And those targeted interventions would have resulted in those communities getting an improved and a more reliable water supply. So under this particular program at the Ministry of Public Utilities, the Community Water Improvement Program, we have identified 22 communities around Trinidad and Tobago with a budget of $20 million. Approximately 84,000 citizens who live in those communities would see an improvement in their water supply by those targeted interventions. And very soon the people of Trinidad and Tobago will be seeing those communities, hearing the testimonials of the residents who have experienced an improvement in their water supply by just $20 million that we would have gotten in the midterm review from Ministry of Finance. And we put together a small management team comprising professionals in the Ministry of Public Utilities as well as the executive management of Wassa, identifying about 120 workers within the Water and Sewage Authority who worked night and day, did not claim one single hour in overtime, working up to 11 p.m. in the night. And very soon the people in this country would see those communities that would become beneficiaries of this targeted intervention to improve the water supply in their respective communities. Over 84,000 people benefiting from an enhanced water supply by just a $20 million expenditure.
And I refuse to call these communities low-hanging fruits, but I really appreciate the fact that there are some early interventions because, you know, there's a saying, while the grass growing, the horse starving. So in terms of saying, okay, well, these flowery words that we're hearing from the minister that they're not making any sense to us because we have been experiencing this problem for a while. So, but one of the things you also said is that there are cumulative reasons leading to the output of not having water. And with that, it seems as though there's an integrated approach that is needed. Can you take me through some of those steps, please?
So yes, so before we go on to the integrated approach, so whilst we would have made targeted interventions under the Community Water Improvement Program, we have already mapped out a strategic water improvement plan for Trinidad and Tobago that is that will be referred to as the National Stabilization and the National Water Stabilisation and Improvement Program. And that is a program that will be more expansive because it is going to treat with the transformation of the Water and Sewerage Authority. It is going to treat with modernizing the operations of Wassa and its network, targeting areas of high leakage where thousands of gallons of water, you know, continue to waste because of high leakage pipelines. It's about introducing technology in the way we distribute water as opposed to this manual system that is so dependent on human beings managing every aspect of the distribution process and oftentimes leading to error. So under the National Stabilization and Water Improvement Program, we will be investing in technology, in the transmission and the distribution of water, but as well as we will also be looking at rehabilitating a number of our wells that have not been rehabilitated for years. The production capacity in those wells, they continue to drop because of a lack of proper rehabilitation. We will be identifying water treatment plants that are in a state of disrepair, that are producing water way below their production capacity. We'll also be looking to construct further intakes, further rural intakes all across the country, especially where in those communities where we have rich water sources, rich surface water sources. So under the National Stabilization and Improvement Program, what we will be looking to do is to identify perhaps about 50 million gallons of water more into the national water grid, because what I have recognized as minister is that we are becoming too reliant on expensive desalination water. It is costing the people of this country millions of dollars. We are in an economic state where we cannot continue to expend billions of dollars in expensive desal water. When we are so rich, we are blessed to have rich water sources that we have not been making use of. So under the National Stabilization and Improvement Program, our aim rather is to capture 40 million gallons of water into the grid, targeting those areas that do not have a sufficient and a more reliable water supply so that we can move them up from 1 day a week or 2 days a week to 5 days, 6 days, and our objective obviously is to get them to 7 days a week. We have identified those areas. They're in Sangre Grande, they're in central Trinidad, in Freeport, and some areas of Chaguanas, in southeast Trinidad, in Moruga, Mayaro, Siparia. Those areas, they are very rich in water, and based on the hydrological reports that we have received, there are a number of opportunities that are available to the Water and Sewerage Authority and the Ministry of Public Utilities to get new wells in those communities, to localize the sources of water as opposed to continuing to rely on our main water treatment plants like Carney, the Hollis, North Oropouche, and Navet, and those dams. Those dams have been constructed over 50, 60 years. They have outgrown the capacity, especially when one takes into consideration the number of communities that came on board over the last 30 years in Trinidad and Tobago. So we could...
So speaking about the timelines of the well, the timeline of community development, and I hear will. I'm not trying to peg it down to an exact time and date, but I still want to ask when. What are some of those general timelines that you have in mind? So say we're moving from this amount of days per week to this amount of days per week.
So we have already started rolling out the National Water Stabilization and Improvement Program. We are well into the first phase where we have identified a number of high leakage pipelines. We are already rehabilitating wells in northeast Trinidad, in the Tucker Valley area. We have already started identifying wells for rehabilitation. In the Point Fortin area, we have already started also rehabilitating wells and rehabilitating some of our main water production sites. So we have already started. My objective is to ensure that 1 year from now, we can get that at least 30 million gallons of water from the sources that we have already identified in strategic areas around Trinidad and Tobago. So therefore, if we are successful in getting that water supply, especially putting together a proper project management approach, getting around the old bureaucratic way of doing things, where you engage in cost overruns, etc. You started expensive capital projects, and it is taking 2 years, 3 years, sometimes 5 years before the citizens of this country can experience the benefit of these expenditure and these investments. We are already putting systems in place, a management system in place to ensure that 1 year from today, those communities that we have identified will start experiencing an improvement in their water supply.
And with that, we take a short break. We are speaking with Minister of Public Utilities, Marvin Gonzales. This is In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking with Minister of Public Utilities, Marvin Gonzales. And Minister, I want to go into the integrated water resource management. Thank you. What are some of those factors that go into that?
So what we have to recognize as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago is to first acknowledge that the business of water and the availability of water is not only for Wassa. Whilst Wassa continues and will play a major and a key role in the provision of water to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, there are many other factors outside of Wassa's control that are key towards ensuring that we as citizens continue to enjoy a sustainable water, a sustainable availability of water. And therefore, whilst we seek to transform the organization, transform the Water and Sewerage Authority, we also recognize that we must have a blueprint and we must have a platform where all of the state agencies and all of the non-governmental organizations continue to play the role that they must play to ensure that the people of this country have available to them an efficient and a sustainable water supply. For example, in Northeast Trinidad, we've never had that before. A lot of our water courses and our surface water sources are now polluted by illegal mining and deforestation taking place at our rainforest. And therefore, an integrated water resource management program must ensure that our wells and our aquifers and our rainforests and those things, those environmental factors that are important to ensuring that we continue to get fresh, safe water that go into our water production sites, at our intakes, in our wells, in our aquifers, are safe for the consumption of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, whilst we seek to transform the water sector, whilst we seek to transform the Water and Sewerage Authority, we are also going to be publishing a blueprint for an integrated water resource management program for Trinidad and Tobago, where every single government agency, where every single non-governmental agency, every single business sector and citizens will understand their role in an integrated fashion to ensure that our behavior as human beings do not negatively affect the availability of water. Sometime early last year, one would recall that the Caroni water treatment plant had to be shut down because of silt that was dumped into the Caroni River, thereby depriving over 100,000 of our citizens that are served by that water treatment plant from a reliable water supply on that particular day. It took almost a week before some of the communities that are served by this plant to get back an efficient water supply. What was the reason for that? The reason for that is that a contractor dumped a huge volume of silt into the Caroni River that polluted the water, allowed the water to become discolored, and citizens started experiencing discolored water in their taps. What was the cause of that? The behavior of a contractor. And therefore, we as a country, we need to ensure and we need to recognize that how we behave and how we treat our environment, how we treat our rainforests, how we treat our watersheds, how we dispose of our water, how we dispose of our wastewater, all impact upon the availability of water to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It impacts upon WASA's ability to produce safe and healthy water to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, as we seek to roll out an integrated water resource management program for Trinidad and Tobago, our aim and our objective is to ensure that all the strands must come together to ensure that we have a sustainable water program for every citizen of this country.
But in those strands coming together, looking at the blueprint, having people understand their role and manage their behavior, minister plain talk, bad manners, people need to pay their water bill. You actually stepped in to reverse a decision that was taken a little while ago, but the fact is that if money is owed to WASA, that is money that cannot be used to improve WASA. How do you reconcile those things?
And that is a very important point. To run the operations of WASA, it cost the government of Trinidad and Tobago $2.1 billion on an annual basis. Therefore, in other words, what I'm saying is to get water into the taps of citizens of this country, to get water into our homes, into our bathrooms, into our kitchen. It costs the government of Trinidad and Tobago $2.1 billion. WASA only collects $700 million out of the revenue from customers paying their rates. Those customers who are good and decide to pay their rates. There are over $900 million, nearly $1 billion owed to WASA by its domestic customers, its industrial customers, its commercial customers. With that $900 million, if that is to be collected in the morning, it means, therefore, that WASA's ability to provide an efficient water supply by rehabilitating its wells, by rehabilitating its booster stations, by rehabilitating all its plants, modernizing its plants, utilizing technology, getting additional sources of water, the utility company will be in a far better place to provide an efficient water supply. But the more citizens continue to not pay their bills, it means it is going to have quite a debilitating effect on the utility company to provide the country with an efficient water supply. Because more and more, as we strive to get out of this pandemic where government revenue continues to dwindle, the government simply cannot fund the operations of WASA to the tune of $2.1 billion. And therefore, the aim and the objective of the transformation is to allow WASA to become financially sustainable, to be able to depend on and rely on its own revenue collection to fund its operation. But it cannot do so if our citizens continue to not pay their bills. And therefore, I'm asking and I'm encouraging citizens that we all play our part. We all have our part to play in this very important process. If we do what we need to do, become conscious of our responsibilities as citizens by paying our bills, it means, therefore, that WASA will be in a far better place financially to be able to fund its operation and not have to rely on the state to the tune of over $1.3 billion annually to fund its operation. And all we're asking, all of us, all of its customers and citizens, our businesses, our corporation, pay your bills, and it will put the utility company in a far better place to be able to provide the services that is demanded of it.
And in that process of transformation, Minister, in closing, I want to ask, what are some of those good things that you see with the utility? Because it's always easy to say, okay, well, the pipes are leaking, WASA's only passed to fix a pipe when the road just paved, and there are a lot of things to say that are less than ideal. But what are some of those things, those shining spots in the midst of this process of transformation, to your perception?
I think one of the shining light within the Water and Sewage Authority, I've witnessed it firsthand, especially over the last 3 months, when we began to roll out the Community Water Improvement Program all across Trinidad and Tobago. 21 communities benefiting from various projects to improve the water supply. And what I have seen and witnessed inside of Wassa is a team and a cadre of young professionals, middle-aged professionals, some close to their retirement, working hard, working diligently, coming out late at night, early in the morning, through their lunch hours, ensuring that these projects are delivered within the timeline that we have given to them. Very ambitious timelines. And they work to ensure all these employees, 150 of them or so, working really late at night, not even claiming their overtime, because a lot of them, they are, through their collective bargaining agreements, they're entitled to claim their overtime, their lunch hours, etc. But they have abandoned that, and they have come to the fore to work with us, to work with the team at the Ministry of Public Utilities, to work with the executive management. And what I have seen is that we have a cadre of employees within the Water and Sewage Authority who shares our vision for a transformed organization, an organization that is willing to rebuild that trust between itself and the people that we pledge to serve. And if I have to take anything out of that experience, is to be comfortable within my soul and to be comfortable within my mind that we have a group of employees within the Water and Sewage Authority that is willing to work with the government, willing to work with the board, willing to work with the ministry, willing to work with the executive management, and whoever it is that will put their shoulders to the wheel to ensure that we have a transformed organization, an organization that has a trust, an unbroken trust between itself and the people that it pledged to serve. And these employees, they are shining lights, and they represent to me what we aspire in a transformed Water and Sewage Authority. And I wish to thank every one of them for the great work that they have done.
All right, so I want to thank you so much, Minister. Normally when people say CWIP, I would run in the opposite direction, but this is a different meaning in terms of the Community Water Improvement Program. Minister Marvin Gonzales, thank you so much for making the time. And we want to thank you on behalf of the entire T&TEC News team for tuning into In Depth with me, Dike Rostant.